Welcome back, everyone, to the FAA TFM-AID Challenge Forum. Our next presenting team is from California State University East Bay, and their project is the AVA dashboard.
Hi, everyone. We are very excited to present our project, AVA Dashboard. We are from team California State University East Bay. We just walk through our agenda today. We will introduce our team, and then we will briefly talking about the problem scope and the solution that we propose. And then we will walk through our prototype. The next one, we will break it down and explain in more detail with the design. And the last one is the challenges and limitation that we have. So we are a team of 4 with our advisor, Ian, that's sitting over there. My name is Freddie Augusta. I'm a graduate student.
I'm John Crescenzo.
I'm Tessa Board. I'm a graduate student.
I'm Patrice Reynolds. I'm also a graduate student.
So our school is located in beautiful East Bay, if you have been in California.
Okay, so one of the things when talking about the problem statement, which you guys have heard a lot about today. So starting off what we call the death of 1,000 windows. And so really when we're talking about this is one of the things is we're thinking about how we organize information and how we prioritize it. And so this really stems from a lack of hierarchy. A lot has been talked about the lack of integrated capabilities. Right, so users repeat actions, they repopulate at fields. The next is that often it's complex and inefficient display of information. So one of the things is how do we clarify information and make it actionable? And the last is inconsistent design. So users spend tremendous amounts of energy on recall, right? They have to remember all the different steps they need to do in all different organized applications, right? Does anyone like my graphic? It's quite literal. And I think this is why you see this with all the teams so far is you see an interactive dashboard, right? So this begins to create a hierarchy. It's about prioritizing information both visually and cognitively. So when we think about the integrated capabilities and an integrated system, right, when users don't have to repeat actions, right, it reduces error, but it also reduces the mental and physical time they have to do those kind of mundane tasks. And then in order, going back to being inefficient, right, now we begin to use efficient data visualization. So that's kind of a key component. It makes information and data actionable. And so in terms of consistent design, right now we focus on recognition over recall. So I know where a tool or action is. And right when we're thinking about, a lot has been mentioned about Adobe, right? So if I'm working across all different, the Adobe suite, right? If you look at all their menus, right? They're all virtually the same, right? So it's integrated and it's kind of standardized.
On the left, we have Alice. She's our athletic gamer. She's focused, driven, and independent. She's worried about reroutes and capping, and she needs a safe and expeditious flow of traffic with minimal delays. She's a fan of the AVA dashboard due to the clear, concise interface. On your right, you have Steven. He's outdoorsy, detail-oriented Gen Xer. He's motivated and determined. He's focused on maximizing throughput and balancing capacity with demand. He loves the ability to customize the AVA dashboard.
So next, let's dive deep into our prototype. So the very first thing is it shows the TSD. For the traffic manager, I can whoops. So after I sign in, I can open then. Why is it always go that? Okay, I think.
Yeah, click lower than it.
I'm just gonna like this.
Okay.
So I can click on my navigation panel, and after I sign in, this is the shortcuts that I use the most: webinar, share, TSD flight schedule monitor, but I can also edit this based on my preferences. But I can also leave it out to automatically that the system will calculate how the frequency that I use and put it on my favorites, which is the shortcuts. And the second one is the application, because we know that FDSM has a huge, massive applications, legacy applications. So we kind of included this inspired by the mobile design that the traffic manager can find the application that he or she needs. I can also go to the settings. I can change my brightness, contrast, font sizes, formats, and units. The other one that we add is the support and learn. So if I'm a new traffic manager, I forgot that, oh, how do I navigate to certain things or do certain things, I can go here and quickly find the answer. So let's go to the scenario. The traffic manager received a notification that FCAJ-X7 exceeded capacity. And this notification, I can see that all, I can read it or I go to unread. So in this case, I go to show details. It immediately takes me to the FAA and FCA. And here you can see it color-coded based on the line and the airplane. I can also see the status, active, inactive. I can also sort it by altitude and the time. But in this case, by default, it's by alert. So like the red color is the most priority. I can also look at the advisory. And then I can edit. In this case, I can put in different parameter. I can also go to primary filter and apply. The second scenario, after I put in all the information for TSD, I can go to a GDT tool. And in this tool, I can go connect to the data, go to the airport, because this is the ground delay tool. I can see that the demand and capacity by just all the number is in front of the airplane. We also retain the design for the bar graph. In this case is Atlanta model. But let's say I want to put the parameter. I will go to GDT mode. I put a bunch of parameter here. And this is the one that add to analytics. So simulate different scenario. In this case, traffic manager put in the ATL one, and there's three metrics. The most important is the average, maximum, and total delay. I can see it before and after. After this, I know that there's four scenarios. I can go to my data visualizations. I can compare them immediately before. I can also go to the after. I can share this to the stakeholders, but I will show it to you later before I publish it. And the share is in here. So the share is the idea is inspired by the Zoom meeting. So sometimes I need to share my windows. So this is just the cloud computing technology. I can choose who have access. I can also choose the module which one I want to share. In this case, is analytics. And the next scenario is traffic manager wants to go to NTML. So we retain the same design, but we put these three things is the task that I completed. Again, we quantify so that the traffic manager understand that how many tasks that I have completed today, how many notifications that I received, and how many reports or advisory that I publish. We think that this is really important. Hello. We think that this is really important because it kind of provides a reflection for the traffic manager. And back to the presentation. So the reason that why we choose this is because of the spatial mapping. So you can understand spatial mapping. It's like you're driving a car in the US and then you go to UK. Even though in the UK, the driving is on the right side, but you know that on the left side, it's to go to the directions and then to control the dashboard. And then on the right side is the wiper. And then in the below is where I can pedal my car or put a brake on it. So we inspired by this spatial mapping idea to really provide the skeleton of the system. So different people, different traffic manager even though they have experience or non-experience when they learn the system, they know on the left side is the navigation or user preferences. And then on the right side is my data, which is the FEA, FCA, all the data is here. And if I need to compare, do analytics is from the bottom. Okay, let's talk about the navigation. I talk about the sign-in, it allows personalization and security for people. And then the next one is the favorite. The favorite one is such a great tool that it's kind of act like a shortcut, so I don't have to keep going to this navigations. If you remember, it's on the left sides of the screens, just a little one. And then applications provide convenient access services and different applications. The search button, again, that I can quickly access to the application that I need. And then the settings, the last one is the shortcuts. I can use a keyboard to call the application that I need, or I can also use voice command if it's possible. So when we look at the current design and the new design, the current design, there's so many windows scattered around the TSD display window. And the new design, we really use the power of data visualizations. So the first one is the spatial mapping. How can I get into places that I want to go? So let's say you want to go to the supermarket, I use the GPS. And then in the supermarket, I heard that DC is very famous with the mango sauce. I need to find the right mango sauce. So like data visualization is really powerful tool to help you understand the content and then finding the relevant insights. Oh,
Oops, sorry.
Oh yeah. And then you start looking into more detail. There's a viewing options because interval is like 15 minutes, so that in 12 o'clock, I know that different line, how many planes will go through this FCA 12:15, 12:30, and 12:45, etc. And this is really powerful because we understand that traffic manager, the way they make decision, everybody is different. So we providing these viewing options of data visualization to provide flexibility, but also help them to find relevant information and make decisions.
The redesign of the FEA FCA parameters incorporates multiple data inputs to enhance flexibility, taking into account individuals' comfort levels with data entry. This enhancement benefits both those who prefer clicking through and those who are touch typers. Additionally, the design update introduces a modern mobile-style data selector and a time clock to reshape the process of entering data.
And so the GDT tool, the current one, is the demand. You kind of have to calculate how many planes in it, and we changed the design into that so you don't have to calculate, but also color coded. You know what type of aircraft is this and how many in certain times.
The design update for the ground delay tool brings several improvements. These include a newly organized layout for straightforward use, mobile style date and time selectors, as mentioned earlier, adjustable sliders to assist users in inputting desired data, and drop-down search menus to facilitate completion of detailed data elements, for instance, searching for selected airports.
Oh, scope.
Yeah, under the scope. So there's the input search, and so you get to choose those selected airport codes. The drop-down menus also help display relevant information when needed, reducing cognitive load, particularly for those newer users.
So let's talk about analysis. So after I put in all the parameter, we go to analytics. So this analytic really optimize operational process and how to make better decisions. This also allow flexibility. Right now we have before and after, but this is a scalable design. We can always use compare, putting them together to each other so that when I make decision or when I look at the bar graph, I can make a quick and accurate decisions. The last one, when I monitor my capacity, I can, this is integrated, so like avoid thousands of windows, but I can also interact with it. I can hide priority, but it's all, as you can see on the left side, it's showing there. I can also call it out. So it's just if I need a certain information, I can just call it out immediately. And then if I don't need it, I just hide it. And the advisory, the current and newly designed. So we improve the readability by kind of decluster the informations so that the different NAS stakeholders can read through and find pertinent information quickly. The last one is log activities. As I mentioned before, we added this validate status, completed tasks. I can quickly access notification that I received today, reports, or advisories that I publish. But this is also a great summary for them. So let's say I work 8 hours today. I know how many tasks that I did. I can do a reflection for myself. I can also track my KPI.
Yeah, one thing we just wanted to touch on is that we kind of envisioned the AVA dashboard as a desktop application. So we just wanted to kind of touch on that really quickly. And so one of the things that we've seen, as was pointed out earlier, is like, most of your applications were built, right? I think it was like 1987, you said, right? And so a lot of what has changed over that time period is the development of GUI toolkits, also called GUI. It's gross, don't call it that. But, right, and so what we've seen is, right, since the beginning of, right, just taking Java as an example, is we went from a heavy toolkit, right, to what's called a lightweight toolkit. And so when we think about a heavy toolkit, like what is that, right? It's a platform specific program. It's limited in terms of its capabilities, right? And it takes longer to render. And so we've now moved to this place where we're using lightweight, which is platform independent. They render faster and they have a larger library of capabilities. And so as we kind of like when we thought of our design, one of the main things is that we wanted to make sure that all those things could be designed within Java Swing, right, which is an older program but much more stable. And then so what has been recently developed and some of the things that were pointed out by some of the groups is like I think the Miami group was talking about 3D introducing or integrating 3D technologies, is that Java XF is starting to use 3D graphics. I think Michigan pointed out, right, when they were talking about drawing the line across, right, that's vector-based, so that's also Java XF. So the main thing just to kind of keep in mind is that over time, these things are, scalable and you can continue to develop it. The other thing is we just wanted to point out some things on our limits and risks. So one of the things is that we lack direct access to applications. We weren't able to conduct like cognitive walkthroughs through those specific applications, which is something like obviously when you're developing something, I think that's very important to do. We did not perform user testing on any FAA officials, although we conducted interviews. And a main thing in terms of a risk is any kind of development that you do in terms of modern functionality, you have to think about how it might require additional training for especially veteran users. And so on the right hand side, you kind of see like we spent a great deal of time like focusing on our research and seeing what had been kind of developed around both in the space of what was written about the current system and then also in terms of some design elements of that. And so, the three things that we really wanted to focus on was, how you organize information in a digestible manner, assisting in monitoring and data input, and then promoting situational awareness so you don't get lost in the process of performing a task.
So just the summary today is the first one, integration. How do we integrate these applications? But we also add this analysis tool, kind of help traffic manager to make decision and to also understand the data itself. And the second one, our interactivity. So we use the basic 3-panel skeleton, but you kind of know where it's always be, so left side, right side, and the bottom part. But in here that you can search information, you can filter out, you can sort it out. You can also hide or unhide certain windows, and also the shortcuts. This is really eliminating thousands of windows. And we talk about efficiency, of course. Data visualization is one thing that how do you handle a complex data without reducing the complexity? Because we understand that this project is just a little tips of iceberg, but there's so much complexity. We don't want to reduce the complexity, but how can we present a complex data into a meaningful and accessible way for our traffic manager? And the last one is consistency, that right now we haven't developed the design language because we think that this is something in the future that, if we work together, that we can focus on. But the consistency that you can see throughout our system is integrated. Thank you very much for everybody here. We are open for discussion and feedback. Thank you.
Very much. Judges, we'd like to open up the panel for any questions.
Should I go to the? Yeah.
So I have a quick question. When you were showing like the modeling the FCAs, you had colors, and I think I missed. Is there any differentiation between the colors and like what they mean, or are they just showing the options, like the green and the blue and the purple?
This one,
No, down in the list. Like, is there any differentiation between the colors, or is that just like how it shows up on the map?
So it is when the traffic manager choose to create a line that the traffic manager can choose. So in this case, it's FCA's JX7.
So it aligns with the colors
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
map.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
While you're on that, you were just showing the.
Oh, yeah,
drawing
you got
with
it.
all yeah, those expand, I think I saw quickly to give you some additional information. So one of the pieces that you may consider including in there, if you've seen the FAA timelines, they show you the demand, the counts over time. So I think maybe an interesting addition to this view is when you expanded it, if you could also have that timeline, so you can avoid having, the image you showed earlier had a bunch of those timelines all around the map. If you could view them in this table directly, that would
you mean the GDT, the ground delay?
No, for the, to show how many aircraft are expected to cross that line over time.
So we created this, this is what we created. So you can also access in this way. So every 15 minutes, how many planes will go
Right. So
through
yeah,
here.
So that's, how did you get there?
Oh, you can just change over here.
I see. Okay. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Quick one, Ben. I appreciate your focus on the data visualization, the challenge of that, and the idea. And I think one way you were showing that I admit I didn't follow very well was the several windows. You had a button that said connect to data, I believe it was, and didn't follow what you were doing with that button that changed things.
Yes. So connect to the data, because this information we did research. And we found out that on GDT, there's 4 models: historical data, live, and GDT modes. And if the traffic managers want to call out a previous data, it will go to live or historical data, and then I will open it and will show the previous one. Yeah. But then if I need to model it, I'll go GDT mode, and then like analytics.
So I like the idea of the visualization. Not sure how many constraints that a traffic manager normally works with. Have you thought about what happens if you run out of colors? As you know, among men, we have about 8% of us are to some extent color vision deficient. So have you thought about how you may be able to overcome that?
Yes, I think the other way that you can also add texture. So even though it's the same color, but you can add like diagonal, or you can add different texture to kind of create different legend and to more understandable.
Yeah. So that's just as he was pointing out, like, so you can kind of see here as we began to kind of explore that. But yeah, you would change these as to indicate different, you know.
A couple of things I really liked, the ability to customize that panel on the left to pick your most commonly used tasks and your most commonly used applications and arrange them, because there are quite a few differences between different types of users and the tools that they might want to use more or need to use more. So I thought that was really an interesting idea and a very useful one. I think the other thing I really was interested in was the search to get to the support and learn, because that's one of the areas where TFMS has struggled in the past, is finding ways of introducing the help functions and making them actually helpful, relevant, useful to what you're doing at the time. Would there possibly be a way to, in addition to having the ability to search in that bar on the left, to have access to that when you're doing something? So as you're building that FEA or you're building the AFP, have access to.
Yes, absolutely, because the navigation bar is a bar that I can always access into it, even though, so let's say I'm looking at the TSD and then I need something, and then I can just open up this bar and then I can go to that support and learn.
Very nice presentation. I very much like how you very clearly define what type of stuff slides out from the left versus the right from the bottom, and then keeping that as a very consistent model. I really liked some of the dialogues that you've cleaned up, specifically the GDT setup. It had a very familiar look, but it was so much cleaner. The one that you might want to go back and look at in a little bit more detail is look at your timeline. If you can pull that up.
Yeah.
The monitor?
For the timeline for.
Where your flights are shown minute by minute.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Hang on. Let's go back to. Sorry. He's talking about this. Correct?
No. When you model the program and you're showing the flights.
Yeah.
On the left-hand side.
I think it's here.
Yeah.
This the one.
So you seem to be showing just flights and the status of flights, but you also should be showing slots, open slots, canceled slots, unbilled slots.
Okay.
So it's like half the data's kind of disappeared.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think we didn't think about it, but it's a good point that we absolutely need to include all
Yeah,
this.
it's kind of a tricky thing to catch, because if you're looking at screenshots, you won't see those unless there's a program already in place.
Okay.
But there is kind of a whole layer of extra data that's not being represented here.
Okay.
But it is a very interesting alternative to what we have right now. And, you know, if we somehow fit in what's missing, it's an interesting alternative to think about.
Okay. Thank you.
And I really like the way you presented the advisory. That was, it's a little thing, but wow, it's like right away I was able to pick things out. That was really nice.
Yeah, because our focus really in efficiency, and then when I need to find information, how can find that information quickly and accurately, so that we always kind of focus on that area. Thank you.
And let me just ask the same question I'm asking. You again seem to be envisioning this as a desktop application, not as a browser.
Yes. I mean, there's a couple of reasons we kind of thought about that. Like, we know you want to integrate certain like cloud capabilities, but in terms of Like, so for instance, just taking Java, for example, right? There's 8 million developers of Java, right? Oracle is a large corporation. So, if you're having issues, one of the things is you can call up Oracle on the phone, right? And you can begin to like fix a problem if that's the case. I think there's certain kind of potential security vulnerabilities with going completely web-based, but that's kind of why we kind of settled on desktop.
But in addition to that, this skeletal is also you can apply on the web. Yeah.
Miro stole some of the things that I was going to say, except my reaction to seeing the simplified flight count was relief. And it made so much sense. I mean, seeing pop-ups, it's nice to know, but unless I'm getting an edict change request and I'm going to take some action to put an aircraft in a slot, I'm not looking for them. So I felt tremendous relief. I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. You have the hour, you have the number of aircraft, and there we go. And the same for the simplified advisory. Oh my goodness, that was wonderful. So great job picking up on some things that we already need and cleaning it up, simplifying. Also in the applications, of all the dozens of applications, you managed to select just the ones that at least we at the command center really care about and we access frequently. So I liked all of that.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
I'm gonna ditto what everyone else has said about the design. I think it was refreshing to what we have currently. And for you all not to have access to a facility to kind of see or to kind of envision a different layout, I think you all did a great job. But I do have a question, and I read it in your paper about voice assistance, but I don't think you mentioned it during your briefing. How do you envision the voice assistant? Because when I first saw it, I was kind of like, well, it might work if we had a headphone, if we were speaking into a headphone, but in the environment that we're in inside the facility, it will probably be difficult. So I just wanted you to touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think we think this from a universal design standpoint. So maybe some users are not able to use their hand at that time. Maybe they have drinks or they have food on their hand. It's a maybe. And at that time, we call it edge scenario. So how can we design for edge cases for those people is using this voice command. But hopefully they're focused on their job.
Yeah, and one other thing, which is, like a lot is talked about ChatGPT and so forth. And so a lot of those kind of AI technologies, they're large language models. So what that kind of means is that right before, if you're talking to your Alexa, you're like, Alexa, turn off, you have to give it very specific commands. And so what, LLMs kind of let you do is you can have a little bit more of a conversation. It's kind of broaden the range of how you kind of talk to a machine. And so like we, as he was talking about with edge cases, it's like, maybe it's something where you're talking about, right? Like we envision kind of like a scrollable map. And so maybe you're talking to your machine and you're like, hey, navigate to that particular, FCA. I just want to see what's that like?
So I'll put in another plug for the FAA here. There's a lot of research into applying that, the language learning models to FAA. A use case that I'm familiar with is readback errors when they're reading clearances to pilots and learning when there's errors or being able to digitize those. So if you guys are interested in that, the FAA's, that's the next frontier for the FAA because we need to get things perfect. I mean, safety clearances are a safety thing.
Okay.
So there's a lot of emphasis on performance requirements to get it near perfect, like 99.9999. I think it's, the 6 nines rule. So just FYI, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, there's a lot of work in the FAA.
Yeah. It's one of those things is not to go on a tangent too much, but yeah, one of the things is kind of like, it's really, as you pointed out, it's getting that last kind of like 10 to 15%, right? Like on point.
Yeah, Alexa, if they order the wrong, TP, brand or something, not a big deal, but missing a fix and a clearance is a big deal.
Do we have any other questions from our panel right now?
I have a fun one again, but I have to know, is Ava another bird or is it something else?
Oh, no.
This is
No, Ava. I have a niece named Ava, and so, but like spelled with the E, and then kind of short for aviation. But like, yeah, we just thought it was kind of like a fun name. Yeah, but yeah, definitely not a bird. Is it a bird?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Yeah. So it's
Yeah, it's not our mascot or anything like that either.
so related to aviation and harkens back to your niece.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions from the panel?
I will make one more comment. I appreciated you guys' realization of the risks and the limitations you had, especially in your research. Props for being honest about that, because going into that can help, move stuff forward in collaboration versus just kind of filling in the holes and making it up as you go along. So good job.
Thank you.
Other questions? We'll go to our in-person audience first. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have any additional questions for the team. Question?
Hi, I'm Kerrigan from University of Miami. I was curious how your share feature worked. If that was, you talked about like the screen, sharing your screen. Was that just like a screenshot of your current screen, or was it a video clip? I was just curious.
So it's like Zoom, that if I need to share a screen, I can share to this person or this group of people, and then I can choose which window I want to share. I can show all windows, or I can show like just the analytics side.
Okay, so it's almost like a Zoom,
live.
like a video. Okay,
Yes.
okay, and then you have to end it too. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Other questions?
Can I ask one? I wanted to somewhat comment also on the GUI is gross comment. I agree, actually, even though that I do quite a bit in that area. What I did like, and it's more a comment than a question, is that I noticed that you have autocomplete entry of data through a keyboard. I've not seen that before, and quite a few of our systems do not have that at all. So I think that was very interesting that you actually touched on that. So my notion is always that if you can do something through a GUI, but I'm more in tactical interfaces, I always try to find something that I can also do through a keyboard. So I appreciate that you actually included that. Was very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, you go for it. Yeah, one of the things that we kind of thought about is when we're thinking about new users versus old users, is that older users, obviously, they tend to, right, they don't need a drop-down menu per se, right, to write out the airports. They pretty much know those things. So those people move through systems like quite quickly, right? Like through tabbing and so. But then, new trainees, for example, they're more right? What's called hunt and seekers, right? Or clickers, right? So, and that's sort of, right, more of a kind of background around like video games and more current kind of GUIs. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, first of all, really nice presentation. I love your GUI. Yeah, so like one thing that I thought was a nice touch was the ability to change font sizes. And I had a question related to that. So if you were to increase the font size to, or for example, NTML, they're spelled out, would that kind of go on to the next line, or would there be a ... Just curious on how you would handle that edge case.
So if we think about mobile design, it becomes ... But because this is a short, so like only 4 letter, I think even though you increase, I mean, you're not going to increase like, unless you increase like 100 PTA. It's usually like people with half difficulty maybe go up to 24. It still fit into this frame.
Got you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from our audience?
Hello, my name is Kate from the University of Michigan.
I love your presentation, but I have a question about like when you were talking about like the consistent spatial awareness, the consistent screens, and how analytics will pop up from the bottom. So let's say if there's an edge case where the user doesn't like the layout of that, is there a way for the users to customize their layout?
So it really depends on developer because if the developer is okay that you can change it, then it's fine. But in our project, we want it to be more rigid. It's like when you drive a car, right? So like you're not gonna put the brake on the left. So that's also how do we train people into a certain mental model. And to if I need analytic, I know it's always in the bottom. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, but the brake is on the left.
Other questions from our audience? Okay, do we have any questions on the live stream?
Sorry, Tori, I've got one more that I just thought of. You had described your two user personas, and I liked that. I liked including that and thinking through that. Can you point to any decision that you maybe waffled back and forth on, thinking through those two personas and any tension between them and what they might want? In other words, how did they translate, specific item number two, in which they translated into your design?
Yeah, so our persona is more an experience, and the other one is just newly trainee. And this reflect on our, let's say, shortcut and things that the more experienced traffic manager can use it. But also we kind of balance like retain the same design language like the bar chart. We didn't really change to let the veteran understand so they don't have to relearn this. But I think that's just most, and then the support and learn is probably for more the inexperienced traffic manager also.
Yeah, I have one more item. So I didn't catch it so much during the presentation. Maybe you guys were moving quickly, but I did make a note of it from your paper. One of the things I liked is that you talked about using mouse over versus having to click to get additional information or to do something. So I thought that was very powerful from, you know, our click counting experiences. The fewer clicks and still provide the information, the better. Can you remind me where you have some of that in your design?
So this is the limitation that we have using Figma. So for example, if I hover here, it will tell me this is webinar. If I hover here, it should tell me what application is this. The problem with Figma, if I want to make it clickable, I couldn't add this hover state. So that's one thing that we really want to show, but we couldn't show it. Yeah.
All right, do we have any other questions from our judging panel?
Yeah, so I like the consistency. I've noticed though that there you have an alerts indicator, a little bell, but it doesn't light up when you have alerts. So it's that it can be a limitation because of the environment that you're using, but I'd like to see consistency there. So if you have this minimized side panel, that if there's some information coming in that may need to draw your attention, that you show it there. And if it sits there for a long time, you may need to add some movement to actually draw the person there, because as you know, color doesn't draw attention, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely a good point. Thank you.
Okay, I know we have one comment on the live stream. Amy?
Yep, so this wasn't a question, just a comment from Marina, a professor at Cal State East Bay. She said, just wanted to shout out the brilliance of the CSU EV students. Thank you for your thoughtful approach to design and experience. So proud of you.
Oh.
Thank you, Marina.
That's a nice shout out. I know Matt has one more question for you.
I do, and I wanted to ask, just again, since time permits, a similar question to what we posed to the last team. If each of you could run through, what did you find to be most fun, interesting, exciting in the time we have left? I would love to hear it. This has been really fun.
For me, I love to solve complex problem, and My school project is usually not this complex. And then when I do the research, I have to read, because we didn't have access to the facility, we only interview Kurt. So I read all the paper, the TSD and the GDT, everything. It's so complex. But I really don't want to reduce the complexity. And then I think the challenges is how do you make this complex thing into accessible and easy understand to the users. So that is, I think, the most fun part for me.
Yeah.
I think for me, just overall learning the whole airspace system and just getting to learn it as being a patron of it and being in an airplane and thinking, wow, how does this complex system work? And really being able to understand it. And then also, this is kind of random, but prior to this, I worked in the auto industry. And so they have a similar issue of being in the system that's super dated from the 80s and not really meeting the new technology that's happening today. And so I worked in that for a very long time, and thinking about it, I was like, I wish in one lifetime I could update this whole system. And so it was a cool experience to be able to do that for the airspace system.
For me, I think it was like combining two of my loves. When I was 3 years old, my mom took me on a trip to Germany to visit my grandma. And at the time, they don't let you do this now, of course. They used to let the little kids go into the cockpit to meet the pilot. And it was like a British Airways. And I still have a little pin with the wings on it. And from then on, I was always hooked on air travel. And combining my love of air travel and my love of design, I've been a designer about 30 years. This was just an amazing opportunity. So I'm really grateful for this.
Yeah, I think Brigham put it best, which is like a bell curve, right? So, there were times where I was like working with the crew and I would literally just be like, I don't get any of it. And I would throw my phone against the wall, and then call them back like an hour later and be like, no, I think I got it. And then you're like, no, I don't. So, yeah. So it was a challenge.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor to any other questions that we have for the team. Yeah?
Alicia Fernandez, I'm supporting the FMDS team. So you guys have discussed how you didn't really have access to a facility. I'm curious about, now that you've been through this whole process where you've done all this research and you've been through this design process, what are some questions that you would want to ask some of the practitioners now that maybe you didn't know you should ask when you started this process?
Yes. So the biggest problem that we had is to figure out the flow, because there's paper, there's scenario, there's screenshot, but the information are kind of scattered or fragmented. So it was really, really hard for us to understand the flow. We have to reread again and kind of trying to make sense by ourselves. So I think what will be really helpful is to kind of show us, maybe like a video. Oh, this is how it starts. This is when the beginning, the middle, and then how you post advisory and then how you monitor, to kind of get the full pictures.
Any other questions?
Hi, Courtney Wells, FMDS Communications Lead. So one of the goals of the TFM-AID Challenge was to engage with academia and get academia aware of the FAA's mission. So I was just curious if this challenge has encouraged anyone to seek a future career in the aviation industry.
Oh, for me, it's 100% sure, because I just graduated last month in May. My name card. Yeah, so, and I love doing research. I love design. And then when I did this, I think we started in February. I immediately love it because it's, again, very complex, but it's also a real project. And then for me, it's what is really rewarding is that understanding the problem and then finding the solution and it's actually really solved the problem. So for me, 100% sure.
Birdie's available. Yeah. No, I still have my thesis to finish. But yeah, this was a very, like, I think it is a good question, which is, yeah, no, yeah, it's, yeah, it was a very rewarding, like, challenge to actually do. And it did kind of intrigue my interest.
Yeah, I think for me, especially living in the Bay Area, like everything there is very high tech and everyone's like, oh, I have this startup and we Apple Pay and all this stuff. So knowing that something that's been around for so long is like really open to being innovative and taking on these new technologies that are emerging is like kind of eye-opening to be like, wow, okay, maybe this is a more progressive area than you would think it would be.
I'm also really interested, and when Tori mentioned in the beginning that they have internships with the FAA, I'm going to check it out for next summer. I'm there.
Your name card.
Other questions? Going once? Twice?
Sold.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the California State University East Bay team. For our live stream, we are going to take another break, our final break for the afternoon. And we will see you back here again at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time.